friend, how are you doing today? My name is Mary, this is Happilyeveresch, and today I want to bring you my winter book haul. I'm calling this my winter book haul because these are all of the books that really have accumulated since October, I think. But I am going to be doing my Christmas book haul as like a part 2 because I don't want to overwhelm us with all of the books, and most of these are either book of the month club or ones that I thrifted, so I felt like that was a nice kind of break. Then I'll do a Christmas book haul, and then I think that hauls will be taking at least, I hope, a 4-month kind of break from my channel. I do still plan to subscribe to Book of the Month Club, so I might kind of do a quarterly wrap up to see like what I've got from Book of the Month Club, but I do kind of plan to not be buying books the first couple months in 2021. We'll see how that goes. I'm feeling very confident about my goal now, but I kind of am not just slowing down on my buying of books, but I'm hoping to kind of just be slowing down on just purchasing things in general and just kind of checking my consumption habits. I really kind of want to be thinking like, why am I buying the things that I'm buying? And yes, that has nothing to do with books, but that there probably won't be any book hauls on my channel for a few months. But without further ado, let's chat all of the books that I have brought into my home this winter, late fall and winter season. And like I said, I'm going to start with my Book of the Month clubs and Book of the Month Club pick books, and then we will go on to everything that I thrifted. So I have already unhauled a book that I've read from Book of the Month Club, and that is Leave the World Behind. I've talked about this one a lot. It was one that I was glad that I read, but definitely not one that I need to keep on my shelves, and I believe I got that one in October. And then I added 2 more books on in October, the first one being The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V.E. Schwab, and I think this book is stunning. This is a romance fantasy time travel story. It sounds like a bucket of fun, and I've never tried any of Schwab's writing, and she's much beloved here on the booktube space, but this one definitely has piqued my interest out of all of her titles. There is this young girl who is cursed, and she's cursed to live forever, but no one will ever remember who she is. So this endless life, but it also the seemingly endless loneliness, and that's until someone does recognize her. And so it's her story, their story. I love this cover, and I couldn't help it. It sounded like such a unique premise, and like I said, I need to get to some V.E. Schwab just to kind of see what all of the buzz is about. I do believe that V.E. Schwab is the title that, or the name she writes under when she's writing adult books, so I do think that this is an adult book, but don't quote me on that. And then I also got sucked in by the hype and added on Fredrick Backman's new book, Anxious People. I have a love-hate relationship with Fredrick Backman and his writing style, so I'm not exactly sure why I decided that I needed to buy this one brand new instead of getting it from the library, but I think it was like super duper new, and I had heard so much good about it. Now I'm hearing more mixed reviews, but honestly the mixed reviews make me a little excited because I'm wondering if maybe if this isn't people's favorite Backman, it might work a little better for me since I don't tend to super love his hype books, but I believe this kind of centers around a bank heist, so we'll see. I think that he always has really intriguing plot lines and characters, but like I said, the writing style just doesn't always do it for me, so that is also what makes me a little nervous because that doesn't often change a ton between book to book. So I'm gonna give this one a go and we will see, but this was probably one that I shouldn't have bought, but I did anyway. And then my 2 books in December. I skipped November, and so I picked 2 for December, and the first is Winter Counts by David Heska, Wanbli, Weiden. This is a mystery story, and it's set on a reservation, and we're following our main character who is the local kind of law justice enforcer when actual justice isn't served to the people on the reservations. He kind of takes it into his hands to seek justice for the people, and it just sounds fascinating. It's my goal, an unwritten goal. I didn't like actually write it down anywhere, but ever since reading There by Tommy Orange, I've been wanting to seek out more Native writers, and so this is one that was kind of given to me through Book of the Month Club, and I'm really excited to take the opportunity to read this one. So this was my add-on. And then my pick was The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. This is the book I'm currently in the middle of right now, and so it is away somewhere. I don't have it in my pile. It's a short story collection, and I believe the last one, which I'm getting ready to read, is a novella. It's pretty realist. There's maybe like a twinge of like otherworldliness to these stories, but for the most part, I would say they're kind of very firmly based in reality. Some of the stories in this have been really fabulous and have been like 4 or 5 stars, and then some have been just okay. None have been duds, so this is probably going to end up getting like a 3.5 to 4 star rating from me. But I think Danielle Evans' writing is just so smooth to fall into. It is so easy to fall into her prose, and I am really enjoying this short story collection. I would also say it's not overly gratuitous, which I feel like is a lot of times my complaints with short story collections, because it seems like in the short form, authors oftentimes kind of take a lot more liberties, and I appreciate that these are not, because that is just definitely not my cup of tea, to read like super gratuitous things. I would say there are like hard things that happen. It's not always like the most PG writing. It definitely isn't overly like in your face, and so I appreciate that. So yeah, take that into consideration if you're like me and you enjoy short story collections but often have a hard time finding ones that kind of really fit your niche. But I'm really enjoying that one, and I'm glad that they picked a short story collection. I also remember seeing it featured in the New York Times, so I was glad to get the opportunity to read it, and I will be very interested to see what else this author puts out. All right, before we jump into the thrifted books, I did have 2 sneaky new book purchases, which I don't do a lot, but you'll see why I bought this one. I bought Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, brand spanking new. I actually bought it from Waterstones, and it was shipped to me here in the States. We don't have Waterstone stores as far as I know in the United States. But the UK cover of Hamnet is so far superior to the US cover that I couldn't help myself, and it honestly wasn't that big of a price difference if I was going to buy it new to get this gorgeous hardcover from the UK. So I went ahead and did it, and look at this naked cover. I mean, stunning, truly stunning. This has been Maggie O'Farrell's book and Maggie O'Farrell's year. She's won so many awards for this. This appears to deal with grief and loss, in particular of a child, but it's also kind of a retelling of history and historical fiction. I also love the bottom line of this. Of the synopsis, I have to read it to you. Above all, it is the tender reimagining of a boy whose life has been all but forgotten, but whose name was given to one of the most celebrated plays ever written. I almost got a little choked up just reading it. It just sounds beautiful. I've read Maggie O'Farrell's, I think it's her memoir, I Am, and it was phenomenally written, and I've been wanting to try more of her work, and I'm going to get to this one this winter, and if I don't, I'll be very upset with myself, but it's definitely one that I want to read very, very soon. And then a book that I've already read but wanted to own a physical copy because I do plan to reread it physically is Gentle and Lowly, The Heart of Christ for Sinners and Sufferers by Dane Ortlund. I listened to this on audio, and it was a great audiobook experience, but there's so many beautiful gems and truths in here that I wanted to physically read and underline, and just be able to meditate on it a little bit more. This is obviously a work of Christian nonfiction, and it's all about focusing on what the Bible says about who God is at his heart, and what that means for the full character of God. And so I can't wait to reread this one. My husband wants to also reread it physically. We gifted this book, which is why I own this physical copy, to my in-laws and to my grandparents' in-laws. And yeah, it's just definitely one that has been such a balm in this season of hardship, and just for this 2020 year. So I definitely think if you're interested that this is a great Christian nonfiction to check out. All right, and now for all the thrift finds that I've had this season. I have found quite a few nonfiction that I'm pretty excited about. The first one was one that I probably only picked up because I was talking to my husband about this very same topic the night before, and I happened to find a book about it at the thrift store, which was just a little bit of bookish serendipity that I couldn't turn down, and that's We Are What We Eat, Ethnic Food in the Making of Americans by Donna R. Basia, I think is probably how you pronounce her last name. This is kind of what it says on the title. It's the story of how so many different people groups have influenced what we consider to be like American food. On the back it says, it is a complex tale of ethnic mingling and borrowing, of entrepreneurship and connoisseurship of food as a social and political symbol and weapon. This book was published a while ago. Let's see, 1998. So I do think it might be a little dated in some of like the conversations, but I think probably the core research and like the history of food in America and what that's looked like and how it's been shaped by so many different traditions and people, I think that that will still kind of matter and be relevant. So this is like, has like fewer than 200 or 300 ratings on Goodreads, but it's still one that I'm super interested in. And like I said, I was talking to my husband about this very idea of like how, like what has shaped American food. And so I'm really interested. And I think it also brings on an even more important question of like cultural appropriation and like what does it mean to borrow and to use and like what could be yours and what shouldn't. I don't know. I think that this will definitely be something that will be kind of food for thought, if you will. But I can't wait to dive into this one. Next one that I've heard so many people rave about, and that is The Professor and the Madman, A Tale of Murder and Sanity in the Making of the Oxford English Dictionary by Simon Winchester. They must have had a book club or something of the sort with the people who donate to this thrift store, because there were quite a few copies of this, but this is kind of what it says on the tin. I think it's more like narrative nonfiction, and it's looking at how the Oxford English Dictionary came to be, and it sounds like a little bit of mystery, but like that history aspect to it. I can't wait to read it. I probably will listen to it on audiobook, but I always love to have a physical copy when I have some nonfiction going in my ears. So I'm glad to have had this one, and it seems like maybe a fun one like my dad might like, and I can share it with some other people. Next is one that I kind of just picked up on a whim, and now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, will you ever read that? But maybe, and that's Collapse, How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed by Jared Diamond. He wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, which is a giant in its genre of nonfiction, and this one just sounded super interesting, kind of more interesting than Guns, Germs, and Steel to me. I think that this is a fascinating topic, and I don't know, it just felt very relevant for the end of 2020. I can't wait to see what he has to say about this topic. And then last but certainly, and at least for my nonfiction thrifted books, is The Greatest Generation by Tom Brokaw. This is looking at what our author calls the greatest generation, those that grew up and came of age during the Great Depression and World War II. So this would be like my grandparents' generation, and it really, like, from flipping through, it looks like it breaks down and looks at individual people's stories, and I am a sucker for looking at normal people to like make an argument for a bigger topic, which I guess for him is that this is the greatest generation. I am interested to see how he deals with this topic, because I think there can be often glossing over of hard things when we're trying to make an argument like that. I don't think it takes away the merit of like the stories of these people that he's telling, but yeah, I'm interested to see how he does it. And again, this book was published in 1998, which is funny. I think when that other one was also published in 1998, so it's aged. We'll see how well it is aged, but it's one I still want to give a go. So I got a little teary-eyed just flipping through it and reading some of the lines, because there is like this nostalgic part of my heart tied to it, because like these are the people who kind of represent my grandparents. So I'm nonetheless interested in going to read it. So I'd love to know if you've read this one. I know this one is a little more popular nonfiction title. All right, and now for some fiction picks. I found News of the World by Paulette Giles. I know that this is coming out as an adaptation. I don't know if it's a show or a movie, but I've seen commercials, which this is one that I've wanted to read forever, and then I just happened to find it after my brain being sparked by seeing the commercial at the thrift store. So I can't wait to read this book. One that I've almost bought on a couple online sites a couple times, but it never actually made it to my house, so I was thrilled to find it for $1. This has a Western feel to it, post-Civil War. I think there's a man who like travels and tells the news of the world, and then he somehow gets entangled with a young girl, and he's trying to help her. Did I sell you on the book? Historical fiction. After the Civil War, this idea of like spreading the news through like your wanderings, I don't know, it just sucked me in. It sounds like it could be like more of a quiet novel, which you know I like quiet literary fiction. So yeah, I will report back. And I don't know, it has Tom Hanks, he's playing the main character. Maybe I will try to seek out the adaptation when it comes out as well, but I was really excited to find this one. Then for two middle grade young adult books, the first one I was so shocked to find is Wonderstruck by Brian Selznick. Krista over at Books and Jams has raved about this author, and it's a chunk of a book, but it's littered with these gorgeous illustrations. It kind of blends graphic novel and traditional novel together, and so I could probably read it in 1 or 2 sittings. Gorgeous cover, gorgeous book, and I got it for, I don't know, $1 or $2 at the Goodwill. So this one, I don't know anything about it, but I don't really want to. I just know it's middle grade, and I'm gonna give it a go. Next is a book that I have wanted to read ever since I was young, really ever since it came out, and that is The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. And this also has illustrations in it, which is fun and kind of just a happy accident that I'm sharing both of these books that have graphic novel elements to it. But this book, I believe, came out in 2007, so really it came out right when I would be the like age audience for this book, but like I said, I never read it, and so I think I need to rectify that now. Again, this kind of would help me towards my goal of reading more Native authors and Native work, and I love that this is told from like a young adult's perspective. This follows our young main character who has been born with like a lot of medical health issues, and so that's very much shaped his growing up life. He gets an opportunity, it sounds like, to attend a school outside of the reservation that he lives on, and he takes it, and it's kind of him dealing with the ramifications of that, like what it means for him to be the only Native boy in an all-white school, kind of how his family and his community like perceives him because of that choice. Yeah, it sounds good, and I've heard great things about Sherman Alexie. I know that this book was banned for many schools when it first came out, so it seems like it probably like pushed the boundaries for when it was published in 2007, and I wanna read it. I wanna experience it, and I was glad to find a copy for $2 at the Goodwill. Okay, that's everything I thrifted, but I forgot I also made 2 purchases. I used a gift card to buy these 2 books from my local bookstore, so I did want to share those with you as well. The first one is On Trails by Robert Moor, an exploration. It's kind of the history of trails and the author looking into like why these paths, why these trails in forests and preserved lands. And he kind of explores like who forged these trails, how did they get there, how are they sustained. I love nature and hiking and conservation areas, and this just sounds like a really niche nonfiction that's right up my alley, and I can't wait to read it. And then last, but certainly not least, a short little nonfiction I've already read, and it's She Come By It Natural, Dolly Parton and the Women Who Lived Her Songs by Sarah Smarsh. I finished this month in December on audiobook. Again, was glad to have the physical copy to kind of refer back to. This is a really interesting short little nonfiction that kind of chronicles Dolly Parton's life, her rise to fame, her rise to icon status, but also kind of using her life as a way to walk through working class women and how they live feminism, oftentimes even if they wouldn't claim, many of them wouldn't claim to be feminists, and how Dolly Parton's songs have championed working class poor women since the beginning of her career in the 60s and 70s. So I really enjoyed it. I didn't always totally agree with all of the conclusions she came to, but nonetheless it was compellingly written. I enjoyed the personal aspects that Sarah Smarsh has kind of throws into her writing, because she did grow up in a rural community in Kansas, and grew up rather poor, and so yeah, I enjoyed her personal aspects that she added to this, and her love for her roots and for Dolly Parton is evident, and I really appreciated that as well. So that is everything that I have brought into my possession over the last couple months, besides my Christmas book haul, which will be coming shortly. So I'd love to know if you've read any of these books, what you think about them. I'd love to know if you've thrifted any exciting books lately. I love a good used thrift store book find. Thanks so much for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed. Please subscribe if you want to see more bookish content from me, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Working 9 to 5. What a way to make living. It's all taking and no giving. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Love to drive you crazy if you let him. And 2 5.